right, we are going to discuss why women love cucking men. It's like one of their favorite things to do. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Okay, I'm Paul, Apex Mindset. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell, get on my email list, link in the description. On Rich Cooper's channel, Entrepreneurs and Cars, before the train wreck tonight, we're going to talk about alpha widowing. So that's going to be a great show. It's really important you understand how that works. And to understand that, it's important that you understand the issue of cucking or cuckoldry. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by those two words here in a second. But you have to understand these things because it's going to dictate why you set certain boundaries in your relationships and with women. You have to understand that women are internally wired to be deceptive with their sexual decisions. They're wired to lie. They're wired to deceive. They do that to themselves as well as to the men that they're with and men in their lives. They do that as part of just who they are. Now, that sounds like I'm being really negative on women. Look, I'm not. Okay. I, as a man, am wired to do violence under certain circumstances and situations. But does that mean that all men are terrible and violent and monsters? Does that give me an excuse to be a violent monster right out in society? No, of course not. Doesn't give me an excuse at all, right? I'm a human being. I have a neocortex, a frontal lobe, a set of personal values. We have a set of societal values, rules, and laws. And it's not okay just to execute violence because parts of my primal internal drives might tell me to do so under certain circumstances. You see what I'm saying? But if I don't recognize that I have those drives, then how am I going to handle modern day problems in a more productive manner? This is the same thing when we talk about women and deceptiveness and women and their tendency to lie. Women lie all the time and they don't mean to. It's a lot of times they mean to, okay? A lot of times they don't mean to. It's part of their internal wiring. It does us no good to recognize that that's not the case. This is just how women were able to survive. If women were honest and forthcoming about their sexual behavior and proclivities, they would be killed. They'd be stoned to death, right? Throughout history, being the weaker sex, they had to use a little bit of deception. In fact, we can even look at the physical body of a female in comparison to, let's say, chimpanzees. When chimpanzees are in estrus and are ovulating, their genitals swell up, turn red, and everybody knows that they're ovulating. Whereas human beings, there are some signals, sure, if you're paying attention, but generally speaking, women are concealing their ovulatory cycle. Even their physical bodies are designed to be deceptive, all right? And the reasons, evolutionary reasons behind that had to do with infanticide and a number of other things. Well, and it actually gets into what we're going to talk about today with cucking. So if you don't recognize that there's a deceptive nature to women, and I'm talking about their nature, not necessarily what they're going to do, right? A woman with a higher set of values and a higher set of motivation might go against her own nature and make different decisions. You're hoping in a long-term relationship that you're going to vet and find that person who can delay gratification, who's a little bit more intelligent. I don't mean intelligent in terms of how many PhDs she has, but just intelligence in terms of emotional maturity, a little bit of awareness, and can kind of, direct those drives in a more productive manner. You're wanting to vet for someone like that. The point is, though, there is a deceptive nature. Cucking falls in line with that. All right, that deceptive nature is a survival mechanism. Okay, so now you understand that, we can accept that. We'll move on to what cuckoldry actually is the act of sleeping with another man and getting pregnant with that man, and then having the man she's in a primary relationship with take care of that kid, thinking that it's his kid. All right. So that's basically what the classic definition of cuckoldry is. That word has been along since Shakespeare, or before that. Okay. Now, cucking sort of became a modern term, sort of a broader term, but I can define cucking here as desiring sex, whether she acts on that or not, from another man, and being aroused not just by the act of sex with that other person, but being aroused by the belittling of her primary partner. So it's the actual belittling and degradation of the current partner that is arousing to her in a cucking situation. You have to understand pleasure principle and how it fits in. And you have to understand the selfish gene theory, if you think of Richard Dawkins, okay? We are designed to do what's evolutionary advantageous for us, even if it's not fitting with like our life circumstance or goals. So, for example, some 45-year-old guy in a marriage who's not particularly unhappy with his wife might have a drive or desire to sleep with the 22-year-old secretary at his work. Why is that? It's because it's an evolutionary advantage for him to impregnate the 22-year-old secretary for seed spreading purposes, right? However, it's a disadvantage for the way his modern lifestyle is. He puts his marriage in jeopardy. If he does get that girl pregnant, it's resources now he has to split. It's a whole bunch of bad things for that guy's life to cheat on his wife in that circumstance, but there's an evolutionary drive to do so. And that evolutionary drive, it's not that his brain and his emotions and his desires are designed to want the 22-year-old to have a baby with her. He wants to just bang her because it's pleasurable, right? So the draw, the actual desire, is to what's going to be pleasurable, or it's pleasurable to have that desire, you see. But the pleasure, okay, and the more pleasurable something is generally, the more evolutionary advantageous it is. The reason why we desire and receive pleasure from sex is because it's an evolutionary advantage for us to do that. So understanding that, you have to understand that when women cuck men, okay, it's pleasurable for them to do so. They're often putting their relationships and their whole lifestyle and their financial security at risk to do so. They're not going to do that because it's not pleasurable. You understand? So let's get into a little bit of strategic pluralism theory, okay, or what we know as alpha seed and beta need, okay, for following red pill circles or rational male stuff. That's summed up in evolutionary psychology as strategic pluralism. So what strategic pluralism is this: most women cannot get a man who is both genetically superior and viable than any of the other options, but who will also provision for her and the children. But she can get a man who's genetically superior, genetically more viable for a short-term sexual encounter. So she will engage in sex with that alpha, right, for that short-term sexual encounter, but she'll try to settle with that beta for long-term provisioning because she can't get both. Even women with lower sexual market value can get a hot guy to sleep with them if he's just sort of horny and he's not doing anything at the moment. She can get that guy to bang him, right? So she's drawn and sexually aroused to try to get that guy to bang her. But she can't necessarily get that guy to be in a relationship with her and then to take care of her potential offspring. We see this show up in studies all the time. They want the hot sex experience for the short-term guy, from the short-term guy. And that is an evolved sexual strategy. They're probably not going to secure that guy for long-term provisions. Now, of course, every woman would love to have her best sexual option stick around and be loyal to her, but they can't have that. Most of them can't. And so they have to make this compromise. Well, this compromise involves deception. She has to deceive a less sexually viable guy into taking care of her and being loyal to her and being in a relationship with her, she has to deceive that guy. So there's a deceptive quality there. There's a lot of deception going on, which is why relationships generally don't work out. All right. Well, so now we understand this strategic pluralism thing and the nature of her deception. She is generally going to settle with a guy that she does not find as sexually attractive and she's not as sexually drawn to as guys of her sexual past. If she's settled with a guy who's beta, she has to deceive that beta in order to have sex with a more genetically viable guy. So if in the relationship, for example, she's going to go out on that girls' night, have a girl's friends cover for her and bang a guy that she meets at the bar and, say she's staying over at her friend's house or whatever and come home the next day, she's sleeping with a guy she sees as more genetically viable. It's not just the pleasure of sleeping with the more genetically viable guy. She's deriving pleasure from the deception. So the deception is more sexually exciting to her than if there was no deception. And she's also deriving pleasure of the belittling, knowing that she is taking another man and that would harm or hurt and it belittles the guy she has at home is sexually arousing to her. The act of belittling that guy is more arousing, makes her orgasm faster and harder. All right. Now, most women will look at that and go, no, that's no, but it's true. All right. Women can hold multiple ideas too at the same time. So with that arousal, she also might feel bad about it. So those two things can happen at once. She could feel the arousal at the time she's cheating and then feel bad about it almost simultaneously or immediately afterwards. That's very common. But that doesn't mean the arousal isn't there. Again, aroused by the deception, aroused by the belittling of her beta partner. You have to understand when she settles with a beta, a lot of times she's not conscious of these choices. So during the honeymoon phase with a new guy, that seems like he's in love with her, she loves him, he's a good provisioner, right? He's a good match for provisioning. If she was confronted, she would probably say, yeah, the guy I used to sleep with 5 years ago was better sex than this guy that I'm with. But she has to deceive herself from that. So she generally doesn't look at that during the honeymoon phase. If confronted with it, she'll say, well, sex isn't the most important thing. This doesn't matter. She will rationalize it. And also she's attached to hope. So during honeymoon phase, even if she's not getting her sexual best during that phase, she's hoping there's a part of her that hopes she can mold this guy or that this guy will grow into somehow magically becoming her best sexual experiences and her best sexual option. Unfortunately, though, that usually does not happen because you can't negotiate sexual desire. Sure, a man can get better at sexual skill and a couple become closer together. That sort of thing can happen. But generally speaking, there is we'll say a chemical component to the genetic draw between two people that just can't be negotiated. So most of the time, it doesn't just grow from being, let's say, an average, sexual experience for her to being all of a sudden the best she's ever had in a year or two. She hopes it will, but it doesn't. And so what happens is after the honeymoon phase wears off, she's oftentimes, because people rush into commitments too a lot of times, especially for provisioning. So she might already have a wedding planned, right? She might even be married, have a kid, or maybe they're living together. So now she's tied into this thing with this guy. And she realizes, or it occurs to her at some point in the relationship, which could be a year or two later, that this guy is not my best. And not only is he not my best, but I don't have any hope that he's ever gonna be. And so once she has those thoughts, now the cucking happens, right? Now she starts looking. She didn't look at past boyfriends for that first year, even though she had better sexual experiences with other guys. She didn't go some will look back immediately, but a lot of them won't. A lot of them won't look back words until they really realize that this is no hope, like that she just committed herself to a sexual life with this person that isn't the best she's ever had. Her hypergamous brain doesn't handle that very well. So this is what causes a lot of things. Desire to go down, for example, for her to become asexual in the relationship, her to ration out sex, to be more transactional with it versus having more frequent sex during, the first, beginning of the relationship. There's a lot of things that happen here. And when a guy betatizes himself for a woman with his behavior, these are the thoughts and feelings that'll often come up for her. And so this is where she will often cuck by looking backwards. Okay. And this is where men of her past fit in, you see, because she's already had men of her past. She's already had those guys sexually. She already has had those experiences. She's gotten them for short-term mating, you see. So when she's in a state of questioning her current partner, is this guy my best? Where else is she going to look? She's not going to look so much to guys that she's never had sex before with. She hasn't gotten those guys. When she's questioning, is this guy my best? She looks backwards and she looks at guys that she's already had experiences with. And that's her points of comparison, you see. Now, when she does that point of comparison, when she finally faces that, which again might not be till well after the honeymoon phase, and she finds, okay, like, no, my 3 boyfriends ago was much better sex than I'm having right now, then she resents the guy that she's with. When the guy that she's with doesn't measure up to her past, that's when the resentfulness kicks in. And that resentfulness, she wants to get revenge almost on this guy. She feels angry with him, like almost like she was duped into a relationship, because women don't, also part of their internal wiring, on top of being deceptive, part of their internal wiring is not to take personal responsibility for their choices. So she'll look at it and be angry at him and angry at herself usually, but angry at him for the choice she made to be with him. And because he doesn't measure up, she's now mad about it. And so that's when having sex with another person and getting off knowing that she is degrading her beta provider, that's why that's there. Women aren't just unattracted to betas. They don't want betas to procreate. A weaker male and having that guy's offspring represents death or a potential drain on resources for the tribe. So she doesn't just not want to sleep. She's not just not attracted to the beta. She disdains him. Okay. She hates him. All right. Even though loves him in some ways because she's in a relationship with him, but she also hates him and what he represents. And so she will orgasm on another man knowing that he would be degraded by that. She will imagine another man during sex to get her orgasm. She will imagine past sexual partners or her better sexual partners she's had past with while she's in the sexual acts with the current guy. It's 60% of women have done this, according to one study. It's hard to find studies on this because these are things that people don't like to study, okay, because it doesn't make women look favorable. But 60% of women have done this before. So I'm not just like making this up, but women will, and I've had women in my past tell me that they've thought of me having sex with them when they're with their partners so that they could orgasm and get a better orgasm. And so these are things that they do. As she ages, she gets less and less likely to be able to secure a partner that's better than partners in her past because her sexual market value declines every year she gets older. So if she's like, let's say a 35-year-old woman, and she settled with some guy, well, I mean, the guys she's going to get at 35 are less likely to be that higher genetic option than when she was 25. You see, with each passing year, it becomes more and more difficult for her to match with a guy that's going to be her sexual best. So what she ends up having to do is settle with someone. Or she's not going to be alone, right? They're not going to do that. So what they do is they have no choice. They have to settle and deceive. And in order to get through that deception, she derives pleasure from the deception. This is why women, when they're not with their sexual bests, keep photos and memorabilia of past sexual partners. They'll display those things on social media and come up with all the excuses as to why they do that. Oh, I just didn't think about it. Oh, I just don't go back and, reorganize my social media, or all the reasons why they'll keep old couples photos around, for example, because they enjoy going backwards and they enjoy the degradation, the fact that other people, even that past sexual partner, like, so she has pictures of her ex-boyfriend all over her Instagram, for example. Well, the fact that her current boyfriend would be threatened by that, she derives pleasure from that. She might also derive some shame from that once she's pointed out. Again, two ideas at the same time. Women can do that. They're very capable of having two competing ideas. Maybe she derives pleasure from the idea that that ex would see that photo. She derives pleasure from the idea that the ex would desire her. Now that could go a different way too, because if she's with the current guy she's with, she sees as her apex alpha, the cucking goes the other way. She's happy to introduce her apex alpha to her exes. She's happy to have her exes on her social media. She's happy to have her exes desire her sexually and then have her be like, yeah, but no, I'm with this guy. So the cucking goes the other way, because women need that social proof to know that they're with their sexual best too, right? They want proof from society, and they don't always trust their own emotions. So when a guy sees her with the current guy who's better, right? Like, so when an ex sees her with the guy she's with and she knows the guy she's with is a better guy, better genetic option for her, she's proud of that. And part of that, she derives some pleasure and arousal at the fact that these exes know that they're not measuring up to the current guy she's with. It's almost like being happy that she won, so to speak, right? And so these are all aspects of cucking that women enjoy. We'll also mention too that women do cuck alphas as well. So don't think it's just a beta thing. When they do that, it's because she feels threatened about the possibility of being discarded by that alpha. So when she's angry at that alpha guy and her emotions are, she feels hurt by that alpha guy because she feels like she is either being discarded or going to be discarded. A lot of women will look at past boyfriends and will even put a past boyfriend in front of that alpha's face, or, hey, well, I'm going to go hang out with this friend or whatever. And that friend is someone she's had a sexual experience with or wants to. She'll do those things to alphas to make the alpha jealous, to make him mad. She derives not so much pleasure, but revenge feelings from that. And that can get into revenge cheating. Sometimes women do cheat to get revenge on the guy. She sees the guy that she's cheating on as better sexual option, but she's mad at him and she wants to degrade him because of that anger, you see? So that is degrading men is part of female nature. You have to understand that. Again, this is a video where we're talking about a lot of negative aspects of female nature. I'm not trying to do that so that you guys hate women. So you recognize these things so that you make choices in what your standards are to mitigate for this behavior that she's not necessarily going to mitigate for herself, right? Because she might not know or fully understand this stuff about herself, all right? So where does this leave us? You have to understand that when women are cheating on a guy, oftentimes it's the deception itself and the degradation of their partner is part of what they're aroused by. Okay. And even if they're not actually overtly cheating, entertaining that idea, especially with men from her sexual past, is not only very normal for women to do that to guys that they're with when they've settled with someone who's not their best. It's something that they do because they're unhappy with the choices that they made, and they're mad at that guy, for not being her sexual best, essentially. And even in the beginning of relationships, if she's doubtful or unsure, or even, whether it's from her own insecurity or whether it's because she knows she's picking someone who is not her best when she's picking that guy, this is why she will keep these friendships. Like, think about it. Why is she keeping a friendship with an ex around, right? It's to cuck the man that she's with, or it's to cuck that ex. It's one of the two things. There isn't another reason. Now, sometimes there's a platonic draw, or, for example, common social circles or family, common, let's say, family friends or something like that from ex relationships, and then that causes them to keep in touch with exes, and that happens, right? But when she's, how about some ex or some guy she used to bang from, 5, 6, 7 years ago rolls around, and she's now his friend. You know what I mean? Why is she his friend? They haven't talked in years. He doesn't call her or text her. They don't, you know what I mean? They're not, but she keeps tabs of this guy in social media, and then he comes around, and then she's going to introduce her boyfriend and give the guy a big, long, lingering hug, and expect her boyfriend to just handle that, right? Why is she doing that? Because she enjoys watching her boyfriend have to deal with that. Enjoys watching him be uncomfortable about that and feel threatened, right? Because she enjoys cucking him. And so she wants to display, hey, here's this guy I used to have sex with. Let me give him a big hug, but we're just friends now. Oh, but there's nothing, you see. And so she expects that guy she's with to just put up with that, because reality is she's mad at him, or she's resentful towards him because he's not the guy that she wants him to be. You get it? Now, the other side of it is, they'll like that ex to come around, that friend now, but we're totally platonic. We're just friends. But there's an element of, let me introduce you to my new boyfriend, right? And they want that ex to see the new boyfriend, to see that they're happy with the new boyfriend, and that the new boyfriend is better for them than that ex was. So that's cucking as well, but it goes the other way. And if you're in a long-term relationship, you want to be on the side of the guy that she is bragging about to everyone, including guys she's used to have sex with, and not being apologetic about that. I mean, of course, she's not going to be gross about it, talk about details and stuff. But I mean, she's going to present the guy she's with in a positive light, as if to say, hey, look, this is the guy, right? And there's an element of, we'll say, satisfaction she gets showing exes that it didn't work out with the new guy that she's happy with. And so that's cucking, but cucking the ex, you see. But be aware of the other way around, where she's throwing that ex up in your face. She's saying, and again, why is she doing it? Is she doing it because you're her alpha and she's angry at you and she's worried about being discarded? That happens, okay? But the bottom line is this. If women are looking to cuck you, then that means that she's never going to be happy with you long term. This is a genetic drive, but you need to be on the side of who she's cucked other people for. All right? Meaning the side of where she presents you and is proud of you and proud of the relationship she's with you in. Okay? And she's happy to have her exes that she's platonic with see that and know that she's got better, that there's a certain satisfaction that she gets from that. That's the cucking side of it that you want. She's not going to not cuck, okay? Because it's in her primal DNA. She will do it. It's a question of whether she's doing it to you or whether she's doing it, we'll say, with you. You know what I mean? Meaning you're the apex alpha. She can never be happy with you in a long-term relationship if she's looking backwards. I've had girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, excuse me, and exes. I've had ex-sex partners keep old photos of me in special albums while they're married, while they're with other men. They've told me about this, that they keep those things around, and their arguments are always, well, that's my memories. Well, no, she wants to be able to look back at those sexual experiences and revel and ruminate over those, because her current partner is unable to effectively erase those experiences for her. Her current partner is been a settle and someone who's not her best. So she wants to look back at better experiences, get off on those experiences, feel more valuable because one time she had this guy and these experiences, because they derive value from those experiences as well. So you got to look for this stuff. If she looks at men in her past as a point of validation for her, oh, look at this hot guy I used to bang. If she presents that stuff on social media, if she doesn't get rid of pictures of old sex partners and pictures of her and him and all that stuff, whether it's from her private albums or public ones, and she's not willing to abandon that part of her past and just leave that in the memory bank, but not revel in it and move forward, she can't be happy with you. She won't be. If she's looking backwards like that, she's cucking you. And that is not somebody who can be in a long-term relationship with you effectively. This is a thing that women do. They love to do it deceptively. They do it in ways where they can have the plausible deniability and blame you for being upset about it. If you, or if you call her out on it, she'll blame you for that. She'll say, you're the problem or you're insecure. She releases some information about a sexual experience she has with a guy, and she'll be intentionally vague about that so that you have to fill in the blanks and wonder how pleasurable that experience was for her and if he was better than you. That's cucking you. She likes to see you. She likes to see you uncomfortable about that. And some of those things are tests too, dominance tests to see if you're going to be threatened or not. But she wants to do that to you because it's pleasurable for her. All right. So obviously this is very damaging to men, but it's something that's very pleasurable to them. It's how they cope with strategic pluralism. It's how they cope with their deceptive nature. It's how they cope with settling with men that are less. They cope with that by deriving pleasure from having sexual fantasies and sexual memories of people she used to bang, keeping around that memorabilia, exploring the idea of having a one night stand with other people and doing things behind your back. This is how they get through the settling with somebody that she doesn't see at her best. This is how they get through when she's mad or hurt or upset at the alpha guy, thinking she might get discarded. She gets through that by getting attention from other men and deceptively cucking that guy. All right. So this is part of her wiring system. So what do you do about that? Right? Well, just like it's part of my wiring system, maybe to do something violent to get my way as a man, all right, as a masculine dominant man, I don't do those things. Why? Because there's a bunch of behavioral things set up in place by me, so I don't, but society doesn't let me do that, right? If I do that, I go to jail. All right. So the conditions around me are not conducive of reacting in a violent manner, which is why even if I have a primal drive to react to something in a violent manner, I don't do it because the conditions around me don't make that a good idea. Well, this is how you set up boundaries in your relationships. And this is how you maintain frame in your relationships. You don't accept a girl who is pining for people in her past. If she's not willing to let go of her past to have a future with you, then there is no future with you. If she's not willing to delete those old photos, okay, and videos and stuff of previous relationships and let those just be something that died a long time ago, then she can't move forward with you because she will cuck you with those things. It might not be today, but it might be 6 months to a year later. And if she's reveling in the experiences she's had with other people, then she can't be focusing that sexual energy and that emotional energy into your current relationship. And this is similar too with any current or new possibilities of sexual opportunities. Oh, but we know that, right? We know that she has to forgo current sexual opportunities. We know that she has to not cheat. She knows that too. Like that we get that part, but we don't always address foregoing her past or foregoing, those other things. She has to be willing to forgo all of it. She has to be willing to forgo cucking you, okay? And if she is doing behaviors that represent that she's cucking you, even if it's because she's mad at you because you're the alpha, under no uncertain circumstances do you put up with that. You set hard boundaries. If she says something vague and favorable about sex with some other guy, you call her out on that and you make a statement about that. You let her know under no uncertain circumstances are we going to entertain that. And if she wants to entertain that, then she can be single. You see what I'm saying? You have to set your boundaries as a man so that these things don't happen. Because if she's doing these things, it's an internal drive. She does it deceptively. Guys ignore it. But what happens is she entertains these ideas and she entertains these things. She cucks her partner, and that reduces that pair bonding that she has with her partner. That takes away from it and potentially destroys it. So if you want to have a pair bonded relationship or even a healthy relationship with just someone you're dating, at some point they got to be willing to forgo these things. Her sexual past is just that. It's just something in her past that is no longer something that she cares about. Future opportunities are just that. They're not opportunities because she doesn't care about the prospect or idea of sleeping with other people. That's not even on her radar. What's on her radar is having experiences with you. That's what you want. And if you're her apex alpha and you keep frame, that is exactly what you get. But a good measure of that is to measure these other behaviors and see what she's doing. And if she's doing these cucking behaviors and if she's deceptive and she's setting things up like that, well, I hope you vet this out before anything long-term or commitment. But if you find it in the commitment, then you need to set these hard boundaries and be willing to walk away. Always love your standard more than a woman. Because if you don't love your standards first, there is no relationship.